The police thought they had arrested the right man.
Breaking news tonight. 42-year-old financial analyst Lucas Albright has been arrested and accused of stealing millions of dollars from the investment firm where he worked.
His fingerprints were on the company computer. His password had approved every stolen transaction. Every piece of digital evidence pointed to one conclusion. Lucas Albright had stolen millions from the investment firm that trusted him. Case closed. Or so everyone believed. Then, less than 5 minutes before the judge was expected to sentence him, an 8-year-old girl walked into the courtroom carrying nothing but a folded piece of notebook paper. She wasn't on the witness list. She wasn't supposed to be there. And no one imagined that within 72 hours, a prosecutor would vanish, a key witness would narrowly escape death, and investigators would uncover a corruption network that had been framing innocent people for years.
Before we begin, type 555 in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Welcome to World Story Studio, where every story brings love, hope, and unforgettable moments to life. Now, let's begin.
It all started with 6 simple words. Please check the hospital cameras first. The courtroom fell silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. The judge slowly looked over the edge of his glasses. "Young lady," he said, "who are you?" "My name is Isabelle." She pointed toward the man standing in handcuffs. "That's my daddy." Lucas closed his eyes. Every parent knows the helpless feeling of watching their child suffer. But this was worse. He couldn't protect her from what was about to happen. The prosecutor rose immediately. "Your Honor, this is highly inappropriate. The child needs to be removed before these proceedings continue."
This wasn't a mistake, members of the jury. This was a calculated, deliberate act. And the evidence will show, beyond any doubt, that the defendant acted with full intent. We cannot let this stand.
But the judge noticed something unusual. She wasn't crying. She wasn't begging. She looked certain. "Let her speak," the judge replied. The prosecutor frowned. "Sir, this trial has already reached sentencing." "And if she's wasting the court's time," the judge answered, "I'll deal with it myself." He turned back toward Isabelle. "You have exactly 30 seconds. She unfolded the small piece of paper. "My daddy couldn't have stolen that money." The prosecutor sighed. "The evidence says otherwise." She shook her head. "The evidence is wrong." Then she said something that made the entire courtroom stop breathing. "The night they said my daddy stole the money, he was holding my hand in a hospital." A ripple spread across the room. Lucas looked up in disbelief. She continued, "I got really sick. I was admitted to Hope Medical Center. My daddy stayed with me all night. He never left." The prosecutor laughed. A touching story, but hardly evidence. Without taking her eyes off the judge, Isabelle answered quietly. "The hospital has cameras. There are nurses. There are visitor logs. There are patient records." She folded her hands together. "If my daddy never left my hospital room, who logged into his office computer?" The question echoed through the courtroom. No one answered. Not the prosecutor, not the defense attorney, not even the judge. Instead, the judge slowly turned toward the prosecution table. "Were these hospital records investigated?" For the first time that morning, confidence disappeared from the prosecutor's face. I wasn't made aware of any hospital records." The answer lasted only a few seconds, but it was enough. The judge leaned back in his chair, studying the prosecutor instead of the defendant. Then he spoke 4 words that changed everything. "This court will recess." Gasps filled the courtroom. "I want every surveillance recording, every admission record, every nurse's statement, and every security log from Hope Medical Center delivered to this courtroom immediately. Lucas stared at his daughter. For months, no one had believed him. Not the detectives, not the investigators, not even his own company. Yet one question from a little girl had just accomplished what every lawyer had failed to do. As officers escorted everyone from the courtroom, nobody noticed a man in a dark suit quietly leave through a side exit. He climbed into a black SUV parked across the street and made a phone call. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking. "We have a serious problem," he whispered. "The judge is checking the hospital cameras." The voice on the other end didn't ask another question. It simply replied, "Then make sure those cameras never reach the courtroom." By sunrise, Hope Medical Center had become the most important building in the city, not because of a medical emergency, but because hidden inside its archives was evidence that could destroy everything the prosecution had built. The judge personally ordered detectives to secure every hospital record before anyone could tamper with them. It was the first smart move anyone had made in months, because someone else was already racing to get there first. At 6:14 a.m., two men wearing maintenance uniforms entered the hospital's surveillance office. They weren't employees. Security footage later revealed they spent less than 4 minutes inside before leaving through a service entrance. When investigators opened the server room, several hard drives had been ripped out. Someone had tried to erase the night Lucas Albright was supposed to have been stealing millions. Fortunately for them, they were too late. The hospital's security system automatically backed up every recording to an off-site server every 12 hours. The evidence still existed. And what investigators saw next changed the entire case. At exactly 11:42 p.m., Lucas Albright appeared on camera carrying his sick daughter into the emergency room. At 12:18 a.m., nurses wheeled Isabelle into the pediatric ward. At 1:36 a.m., Lucas was seen pacing the hallway while doctors treated her. At 3:09 a.m., a nurse handed him a blanket after finding him asleep beside his daughter's bed. And at the exact minute prosecutors claimed Lucas had transferred millions from his office computer, hospital cameras showed him holding Isabelle's hand as she cried through another wave of pain. He never left the building. Not once. The courtroom reconvened that afternoon. The judge watched every second of the footage without saying a word. When the video ended, the silence inside the courtroom was almost unbearable. Finally, the judge looked toward the prosecutor. "Would you like to explain how a man inside a hospital committed a crime from an office across town?" The prosecutor swallowed hard. "My office relied on evidence submitted by investigators." "So you never verified it yourself?" "No, Your Honor." The judge's expression hardened. "Someone wanted this man convicted." Those 5 words sent shockwaves through the room. Lucas wasn't just innocent. He had been framed. But by whom? The answer arrived sooner than anyone expected. A nurse named Martha Oliver stepped forward. "I tried to tell the police," she said, her voice trembling. "I gave a full statement the week after Lucas was arrested." The judge frowned. "And what happened?" "They thanked me. Then no one ever contacted me again." The courtroom erupted. A witness proving Lucas's innocence had existed from the very beginning. Her testimony had simply disappeared. That wasn't negligence. It was obstruction. Outside the courthouse, another emergency meeting was already underway. Inside the top floor of Victory Capital, the company's executives watched the hearing on a private live stream. No one spoke until the screen went black. Finally, the CEO stood. "Who missed the hospital records?" No one answered. His eyes shifted toward the company's legal director. "You assured me this case was finished." "It was supposed to be." "Supposed to be doesn't protect us." He walked to the window overlooking the city. "If Lucas starts asking questions, he won't stop until he finds us." The room fell silent. Then someone quietly asked the question everyone was thinking. "What about the nurse?" The CEO didn't hesitate. "If she talks, everything collapses." Miles away, completely unaware of that conversation, Nurse Martha finished giving her statement and stepped outside the courthouse. Her phone vibrated. The message contained only 6 words. "You should have stayed silent." She looked around. Across the street, a black SUV slowly pulled away from the curb. At the same moment, Detective Paul Mendez rushed toward Judge Harrison carrying a sealed evidence folder. His face had turned pale. "Your Honor," he said, "I think Lucas isn't the first innocent person they've framed." The judge looked up. "How many others?" The detective hesitated, then answered with the number that would transform one wrongful conviction into the biggest corruption investigation the state had ever seen. At least 15. The courthouse was surrounded before sunrise. News vans lined the streets, reporters filled the sidewalks. Nobody knew exactly what had been uncovered overnight, but word had spread that Judge Harrison had ordered an emergency hearing unlike anything the city had ever seen. Inside, Lucas Albright sat beside his daughter, Isabelle. This time, he wasn't wearing handcuffs. Across the courtroom, the executives from Victory Capital looked confident, but they weren't prepared for what came next. Judge Harrison entered the courtroom carrying a single folder. He didn't open it immediately. Instead, he looked around the room. "This case was never about stolen money," he began. "It was about something far more dangerous." He paused. "It was about what happens when powerful people believe the truth can be rewritten." The courtroom fell silent. The first witness was Detective Paul Mendez. He explained how investigators had recovered deleted emails, hidden financial records, and archived police files. One pattern appeared again and again. Employees who questioned suspicious transactions suddenly became suspects. Witness statements disappeared. Evidence was altered. Careers were destroyed. Lives were ruined. Lucas Albright wasn't an isolated mistake. He was victim number 16. Then came the final piece of evidence, a scheduled email sent by the missing prosecutor, Andrew Vale. Knowing his life was in danger, he had programmed it to be delivered automatically if anything happened to him. His recorded confession played across the courtroom. "I helped convict innocent people," he admitted, "not because they were guilty, but because I was told who had to disappear. If you're hearing this, I didn't survive long enough to tell the truth in person." The room was motionless. Several jurors wiped away tears. Even the defense attorneys lowered their heads. The executives, who had once seemed untouchable, no longer looked powerful. They looked afraid. Within minutes, arrest warrants were signed. The CEO of Victory Capital, the police commander who buried evidence, the officials who manipulated investigations. One after another, they were escorted from the courtroom in handcuffs. Not because one person exposed them, but because one brave child refused to accept a lie. When the courtroom finally emptied, Judge Harrison walked slowly toward Lucas and Isabelle. Months earlier, he couldn't imagine standing without assistance. Now he extended his hand. "Lucas," he said quietly, "the law cleared your name today." He then turned to Isabelle. "But you restored something even more important." She tilted her head. What was that? My faith that justice still belongs to ordinary people. For the first time in months, Lucas smiled without fear. Outside the courthouse, the crowd applauded as innocent families embraced one another. Some had waited years to hear the words, "You were never guilty." No amount of compensation could return the birthdays, holidays, or lost time they had missed, but the truth gave them something just as valuable: their names back. As the cameras shut off and the crowds slowly disappeared, one image remained. A father holding his daughter's hand. The same hand he had refused to let go of in a hospital room on the night his life was stolen. In the end, it wasn't money that exposed the conspiracy. It wasn't technology. It wasn't power. It was the courage of one little girl who asked a question that everyone else was too afraid to ask. History often remembers the judges who pass sentences, the politicians who make headlines, or the executives who build fortunes. But sometimes, history changes because one ordinary person refuses to stay silent when silence is easier. Maybe that's what courage really is. Not being fearless, just deciding that the truth matters more than fear.
If stories about courage, justice, and ordinary people making extraordinary choices resonate with you, you're always welcome here.